Pattern and Repetition in Picture Books, a look at Kevin Henkes. Children's picture books make diverse use of various craft elements, from character archetypes to recurring themes and lyricism to prose structure. Pattern and repetition is a widely used and extremely successful craft element that makes picture book prose more rhythmic, lyrical, and memorable. Repetitions, apart from sounding nice, also create a prose pattern that encourages a child reader to participate because they can predict some of the sentences. Difficult words can be integrated into recurring phrases or sentences, thus facilitating the development of vocabulary through context and repetition. One author-illustrator who makes significant use of such pattern and repetition in his prose is Kevin Henkes, as seen in Lily's Purple Plastic Purse, Chrysanthemum, Sheila Ray the Brave, Kitten's First Full Moon, and Owen. Repeated phrases and sentences lend a musical feel to a picture book's prose. The words become more memorable, have better cadence, and are more fun. This increases the likelihood of a child chiming in because certain sentences become part of a larger pattern. For example, in Lily's Purple Plastic Purse, there are the sentences, "Wow," said Lily. That was about all she could say. Wow. These same words appear again 2 more times. First Lily says them, then Mr. Slinger, her teacher, says them, and then her entire class says them. Not only is there a nice sing-song rhythm to these sentences, but they stick in one's head, and a child is likely to start mouthing them while being read to. In fact, Henkes is quite fond of sentences that appear 3 times, and sometimes certain words within sentences repeat 3 times. For example, in Lily, she thought and thought and thought, which itself appears 3 times. Lily's whimsical occupation wish list is also repeated at the beginning and end of the book. This is also seen in Kitten's First Full Moon, where it states, "She climbed and climbed and climbed." This book makes the most of the rule of 3. There are 3 main events. Words like climbed are sometimes repeated 3 times within sentences, and the descriptive action also happens within a sentence in 3 pieces. Some examples. So she pulled herself together and wiggled her bottom and sprung from the top step of the porch. She was wet and tired and hungry. She raced down the tree, she raced through the grass, and she raced to the edge of the pond. In Owen, the sentence, "and Fuzzy was," is repeated twice for rhythm at the end of a list of virtues that Owen's blankie possesses. Because of its placement at the end of a list, the sentence becomes a nice rhythmic bookend that children are sure to remember and anticipate. Chrysanthemum features a similar sentence, repeated twice. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chudd. "Now put your head down." The title character's musical and uncommon name is also repeated 3 times in a row in 3 different places in the text, once again paying attention to how lyrical, memorable sounds will excite a child reader. A child reader may not initially know that chrysanthemum is a flower, but they certainly do by the end of the book. The word is repeated numerous times, and the definition can be discerned directly when it is defined by various characters, and its meaning can also be inferred in various places through context. Henkes often introduces larger vocabulary words to his young readers this way. It can be seen particularly in Chrysanthemum, and not only regarding the main character's name. Chrysanthemum's mother says, "Oh, pish," twice, which is an expression of disdain that a modern child is not likely going to be familiar with. Of greater use, perhaps, is the introduction to the words precious, priceless, fascinating, and winsome. They are written immediately after beautiful and connected with a string of ands. Apart from being associated with the word beautiful, they are also written among sentences lauding Chrysanthemum's wonderful moniker. After a few readings of this book, a child will know that these are positive words, even if they don't know their precise meaning. This method is utilized again in the text when the words envious, discontented, begrudging, and jaundiced are connected with the easier jealous and angry, and used in a negative context. Likewise, the words blushed, beamed, and bloomed are introduced in a similar manner. Finally, the word wilted is repeated throughout to indicate Chrysanthemum's sad state of mind. A pattern of flower-related adjectives is also obviously at work here. Readers also learn the word furious after Lily gets angry in her story, while Sheila Ray the Brave repeats the word fearless in similar context. Perhaps the most enjoyable thing about patterns is breaking them, albeit for a special reason. Children pay attention to patterns, and as discussed earlier, this facilitates participating in the story as well as learning of new words. Because readers are paying attention to patterns, the breaking of these patterns causes them to really take notice. They intuit that this break in tradition signals a special occurrence. In Lily, for example, Lily wants to be a teacher and says so several times. When she decides to change her mind, it is because she has a falling out with Mr. Slinger. When she returns to wanting to become a teacher, the reader knows the pattern has once again shifted because Lily's mind has made another important jump. Indeed, her final declaration to become a teacher feels stronger and more solid because it comes from a wiser, more experienced Lily. In keeping with this same shift of Lily's feeling toward Mr. Slinger, she enjoys Mr. Slinger's tasty, cheesy snacks, refuses them when she's sad, and then brings a homemade batch, courtesy of her parents, to school after she stops feeling sour with her teacher. Both of these actions, her wanting to become a teacher and enjoying the tasty snacks, are set up as patterns and then broken and set back up again. In Sheila Ray, the main character sets up and amends her own set of patterns. Initially, she repeats walking backward with her eyes closed, stepping on every crack, growling at stray animals, and conquering trees all on her own. At the end, her little sister Louise has been self-recruited into the ranks of the brave, and the pattern is exploded and reconstituted, now including Louise as well. Kitten's search for the bowl of milk results in 3 poor kitten moments and 3 still there was a little bowl of milk just waiting, as Kitten continues her search. This is changed when Kitten finally gets lucky, and there was a great big bowl of milk on the porch, just waiting for her. The "for her" behaves like an ownership tag of victory at the end of the sentence, and the reader knows the other pattern will now also be broken and should expect the "lucky kitten" sentence that follows. Meanwhile, Chrysanthemum features the repetition, she did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. When the third time to see this sentence rolls around, the main character appreciates her name again, and the refrain becomes, she didn't think her name was perfect. She knew it was. Another pattern set and then broken in the book is a description of Chrysanthemum's name being too long, scarcely fitting on a name tag, and being shared with a flower. The first 2 instances are derisive sentences uttered by insensitive and bullying classmates. The third instance becomes a beautiful utterance in the mouth of the adored teacher, Mrs. Delphinium Twinkle. In fact, the pattern is broken in 2 ways. It switches from being a taunt to being laudatory, and it is something that Mrs. Twinkle attaches to herself. She is also in possession of a name that is too long, scarcely fits on a name tag, and is the name of a flower. Owen, on the other hand, suffers from a nosy neighbor who is helping to mercilessly strip him of his favorite fuzzy blankie before school starts. The pattern of 3 is again used to set up a pattern and then break it when something important changes. The neighbor, Mrs. Tweezers, twice offers weaning remedies to Owen's parents, which always start with, "Haven't you heard of?" and are followed by the sentence, "Owen's parents hadn't." Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. The third time around, Owen's mother comes up with a blankie to Henkes solution that results in the pattern being broken by the sentence, and Mrs. Tweezers doesn't say a thing. The wicked busybody's power is broken, along with the pattern. Kevin Henkes, like many authors before him, has benefited from the many uses of patterns and repetition in his picture books. Not only lyrical devices, they are tools that work in diverse ways. Patterns are musical and memorable, and thus assist in the growth of vocabulary by allowing for the mood of the sentence and the surrounding words to take part in the pattern and reiterate the contextual meaning of new words. Patterns also encourage reader participation in the act of reading in anticipation of the text. Finally, setting particular patterns in place and then breaking them due to notable plot or character changes is a storytelling device of great efficacy. Used in fairy tales and folk tales for countless generations, patterns, repetition, and the rule of 3 remain integral to the craft of fiction, and are easily spotted in the honed prose of most picture books. Each generation will have its own variations of "I'll huff and puff and I'll blow your house down," or "the first bed was too hard, the second bed was too soft, the third bed was just right."